Canadians watching this should know that the Liberals are passing this bill with 14-year sentences in total disregard for the evidence that was heard before this committee, and in total disregard for the harm that the criminalization is going to cause.
Mr. Davies seems to feel there's a large audience watching that he's addressing.
I don't think there's a wide audience watching, but it was my motion to televise this hearing because I think Canadians have a right to watch.
I hope there's a whole lot of people watching.
The argument that's being made is absurd. You don't get 14 years from an adult selling a carton of cigarettes to a 17-year-old, and that carton of cigarettes will hook that person and it'll kill that person, used exactly as designed. It'll give them cancer. Where do I see the Liberal government bringing in 14-year sentences for tobacco or alcohol? They don't do it. I don't know why. Maybe because the big tobacco or big alcohol lobbies are too strong and they don't want to take them on.
Let's get that on the record that, yes, this is a dangerous drug.
That's simply wrong.
This will be harmful to young people.
This section has nothing to do with children. As I've been pointing out repeatedly, any sentence more than 10 years or any provision that has a maximum sentence of more than 10 years ties a judge's hands from giving a conditional sentence to anybody. To anybody. Even someone that they want to give a first-time offender or a third-time offender, they can't give a conditional sentence to them because of the use of 14 years. Yet for some reason, the Liberals on this committee and the Conservatives continue to vote against that, tying a judge's hands so that no conditional sentences can be offered to anybody convicted of this section. These penalties actually are applied disproportionately to young people, marginalized Canadians, racialized Canadians, poor Canadians. So you can't say, well, geez, we have a 14-year sentence here because we want to protect our children. Life sentences didn't protect our children. His motion said maximum 90 witnesses, but he says we heard from 109. I mean, if that's the kind of disregard for the truth and evidence that we're going to hear, then this is truly a bit of a kangaroo hearing. Not one witness of the 90 witnesses that came before this panel testified that these penalties were appropriate. Not a single justification was offered by a witness about 14 years. That 14 years was an appropriate penalty for a violation of any section of this Act. That's the evidence that we heard. In fact, that's the very reason that the government says they want to legalize cannabis, to better control, get it out of the hands of criminals. The criminalized approach doesn't work, and if anybody in this room sat through the evidence and came out with the evidence with the conclusion that criminalization of cannabis works to protect children, then they weren't listening to the evidence that I was listening to.